Hello. I am just letting people in the waiting room. If you don't hear me for a little while.
Awesome. Let me know if you make me a co-host, let me know, and I will go ahead and help with that.
Thank you. I will do that now.
And you want me to go ahead and start admitting people? I see I'm a co-host.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So,
Hallo Anna,
hallo,
wie geht's?
ganz gut, danke.
Gut.
Yeah, ich glaube, so, no, we should speak English for everybody.
Frank?
So I think I actually contracted the COVID last week. So I guess I get the test results tomorrow, but I have been feeling quite weak. Let's put it this way. So I had to sleep a lot and take a lot of breaks.
Oh, wow.
So I hope I managed tonight to go through. If not, I know Chelsea is there and fully capable of taking over.
Hi, thanks for the vote of confidence, Anna. I'm here to help when you get worn out. You just let us know.
Thank you. Well, I also hope that, everybody is in good spirits for the talk, so I don't have to do too much in moderating. I haven't really heard back from Scott-Arleta lately, so I don't know.
We will begin at 7, and if they are able to join us, they are. I think in the era of COVID that we are just being flexible and going with who's here and who can make it at the time. So I'm willing to be flexible if everybody else is, and we'll make it happen.
Thank you.
And let me know if there's too much background noise. The room I'm in got a little chilled, so I have a heater running. So if you can hear my fan, let me know and I'll kick it off when I have myself unmuted.
Sounds good. Sounds good so far. Are you already a co-host, Chelsea? So you can, okay, good.
Yes, Anne made me a co-host and I'm keeping an eye on the admits here.
Thank you. A lot of new faces. Great.
And for those who have just joined, we have about 5 minutes till we begin. So we're just letting folks in. So feel free to get your drinks, get settled. And a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. I know it does let you know when you join.
Yeah. Oh, and I see our commissioner is already here. Welcome.
Good afternoon or good evening, everybody. Hey, Anna, it's wonderful to see you.
Good to see you, Mingus. So a big welcome to you, our commissioner.
Oh, well,
We are very grateful to have you tonight.
I'm delighted to be here, and it's fun to see some familiar faces in the room too. Thanks for having me. I hope everyone is having a good new year so far.
So far, so good.
Good.
I mean, I guess it started very different from what we thought it would be.
Yes, the recent years have certainly been filled with surprises, but I'm hoping that we wind up with a really great 2022. Knock on wood.
Regardless, you can celebrate a minor holiday on February 22nd. It will be 2/2/2/2/2
Ah.
on a Tuesday. So no matter what the year brings, we get to have an awesome Tuesday on February 22nd. It's kind of what it's keeping me going into February right now.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'll remember to wear my tutu.
Yeah. It's also the birthday of my son, so we have a big
wow.
day.
That is a big day.
Is he your second child?
No,
Oh,
he's
so
my
close.
one and only.
So first, second, and all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey folks, I'm gonna let you know I'm gonna mute everyone just so we're all on that same starting page when we get going in a minute.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Anna, we are at that 7 p.m. mark. We still have people coming in. Do you want to give another minute or do you want to start us off?
Well, I think I'm gonna start us off and, have people trickle in, so we don't have make good use of our time. So welcome everybody. I'm excited that so many people are here. I'm also excited that we got many, many questions ahead of time. And first of all, official welcome to our Commissioner, Mingus Maps again. We are very delighted to have you and join us and come to our neighborhood, so to speak, or to our neighborhoods. So for everybody to be on the same page, the Neighborhood Association from Woodstock, Brentwood-Darlington and Scott-Arleta have this joint meeting. So we try to have some overarching questions, but I know that there are very specific questions associated with the specific neighborhoods. For our Woodstock Neighborhood Association, it's our general meeting that we moved a week up from February. And after we finish our general meeting here, we will have breakout rooms for the respective neighborhood associations. I like to invite our board members from the Woodstock Neighborhood Association to stay on because we have to vote on one issue afterwards. With that, I just want to start to remind everybody to have to have a good, how shall I put this? Regularities of how you use this. So if we are recording the meeting, if you don't feel comfortable being seen, you're welcome to shut your video. You can use the chat if you don't want to speak publicly and put your questions or comments there. I think Chelsea will monitor, I will try to, and several other people I'm sure will have a look there as well. If you want to say something or have a question, please raise your hand, either with your physical hand, or use the button or the reaction button in the Zoom meeting to let us know. Anything else we need to observe? Well, and mute yourself if you're not speaking, remember. To do so we don't have background noises and feedback noises. I hope we're going to have a very constructive meeting today. I also want to remind everybody to keep the discussion very focused on the relevant topics, so we are not jumping back and forth, and bring other issues in, and honor our time limits for the agenda today. I also want to remind everybody to respect others when they are talking and listen to understand. That also means that, we learn from others what their opinions are, what their views are and concerns are. Also, see it as sharing your ideas and ask questions, and also listen carefully what others say. And in order to do so, please use I statements when you speak. Do not generalize. Do not speak for others. And keep it civil, only one speaker at a time. It's very difficult. A lot of people might have slow connections, so we need to be a little adjusting there to wait and hear, and also to give some feedback or questions. I'm sure there will be some things that we don't agree on, but everybody is welcome to disagree and to voice disagreement, but do so without being disagreeable. You are welcome to critique ideas or opinions, but not people. And if you tend to speak a lot, try to calm it down, give space for other people to talk. And if you're someone who doesn't speak a lot, feel free and encourage yourself to share. And since we do have that nice feature of the chat, you can do that in written form as well. So Chelsea, do you want to add anything? I see your hand up there.
I'm modeling, so you can see my e-hand there on the screen. If you're unfamiliar with Zoom, you're going to find that usually in the reactions or under your 3 dots menu if you're on mobile. And if you can't figure it out, raise your physical hand and kind of move it, and we'll try to find you in all the little boxes. Also, I'm Chelsea Powers, she, her pronouns. I'm the chair of the Brentwood-Darlington Neighborhood Association. And I wanted to thank Woodstock Neighborhood Association for putting this together and starting it. And then the last thing I had there is I want to put those things that Anna was talking about. I'm going to post them here in the chat. So if you tend to be more visual than audio, then it'll be there for you. Thanks, Anna.
As a reminder, thank you for doing that.
Sorry, one more thing. If folks want to be able to see who is speaking larger, you want to use the pin function. So you're going to pin that person, or you can use speaker view, which will show whoever's speaking front and center. So hopefully that helps you. It'll be different on your screen depending on what kind of connection you have, but look for those things if you're having trouble seeing us.
Yeah. One thing I also want to say when we come to the question and comment portion of our meeting, it would be very helpful if you can state your name and in which neighborhood you are living, so we can actually know where the issue is occurring that you're talking about, or if it's something that's more general. With that, I like to hand over the stage to our guest speaker, Mingus Maps, and hope to hear primarily on, his ideas about the city government structure and some neighborhood safety issues related especially to homelessness as well.
Well, thank you, Anna, and thank you all for turning out tonight. I really hope that this can become a dialogue. So what I thought I might do is just spend about 5 minutes introducing myself to the room. I recognize a lot of faces, but there are some folks who I don't think I've met yet. So I'd like to give you a sense of who I am and the role I play on City Council. And I want to talk about maybe 4 of the top issues that I'll be working on in City Council this year, which will include charter reform and houselessness and public safety. And then I hope that we can really open it up to a broader and more interactive dialogue. As you have probably figured out by now, my name is Mingus Maps. I'm one of your commissioners on Portland City Council. I think as of today, I've been on council for 1 year and 26 days. And it has certainly been a remarkable ride. Truly one of the honors of my life. And I think everyone will get me here. On council, I am your commissioner in charge of the Water Bureau, the Bureau of Environmental Services, which you probably think of as being the Sewer Bureau, but we actually do a lot more than that. I think of our primary mission as protecting our rivers from pollutants. And I'm also the commissioner in charge of the Bureau of Emergency Communications, which is 911. So if anyone in the room has a problem with any one of those particular services, ultimately the buck truly does stop with me. So I encourage you to ask your questions or reach out to me afterwards and we can see what we can do to help you. There's lots of exciting things happening in my bureaus, but I wanted to take a minute or two tonight to talk about 4 issues which I am focused on for this coming year. And those are COVID recovery, public safety, houselessness, and charter reform. First, let's start with COVID recovery. I'm heartbroken. I think, as I've mentioned, I've been here for about a year, and I think I am on my 4th plan to reopen the city after COVID, but variants keep coming back. I think one thing which is clear is that COVID is likely to be with us in one form or another throughout 2022. And that's going to continue to take some of our time, attention, and resources. I think in order to conquer this disease, we have to stay vigilant and be resilient. In this context, I think being vigilant means, getting vaccinated, getting boosted, wear your mask in appropriate settings, and quarantine should you have the misfortune of being exposed to COVID. There's some things that the city can do also to help you. Last year, we put an awful lot of resources into helping keep people stay housed despite the economic disruptions caused by COVID. And as we go into allocating our resources for this coming year, one of the things I'll be advocating for is continuing that rental assistance and continuing that mortgage assistance for Portlanders who have been economically impacted by COVID. The second issue that you'll see me talk a lot about in 2022 has to deal with public safety, and there are a broad range of issues here which I think are important. One of the things I did several months ago and have been working on frankly, ever since I got into this office, was to do everything that I can do to bring down homicides here in the city. My goal for 2022 is to reduce homicides in Portland by 20% over the course of this next year. I think that we've made the staffing choices and other policy changes, which will get there. Another problem with our public safety system is, frankly, 911. I'm the commissioner in charge of that. I know if you've had the misfortune of calling 911, there's a good chance that you have spent far too long waiting for someone to pick up that call. My goal is to grow our staff and implement other changes which will help us answer a majority of our calls at 911 within 15 seconds. And if you'd like to hear more about that, I'd be happy to unpack that more for you over the course of the evening. And the third piece of my public safety package really focuses in on police reform. I think that we need to have a police bureau which is more accountable and more transparent and more responsive. And that's why you'll hear me advocating for body cams on the shoulders of every police officer. Indeed, that was one of the topics that we wrangled with today in council. I also think it's important that we hire more unarmed police officers who can respond to things like cold cases. If your car has been stolen and you need the police help to track it down or file a police report, you don't need to have someone with a gun to do that. I think that we can dramatically expand the number of folks who are unarmed but out there helping the community. Another thing which I think is quite important that I want to see us work on over the course of this next year is houselessness. I have a pretty straightforward goal here. My top houseless priority for 2022 is to house at least 1,000 Portlanders who are sleeping on the streets today. I believe that because of the resources that the city, the county, and Metro have invested in houselessness services, we're in a good position to accomplish that. And again, I'd be happy to unpack that more for folks who are interested in learning more about that. And then the final topic I think is quite important, and I'd love to engage in a dialogue with you about, is changing and reforming our form of government. I know there's some longtime city activists in the room. They know this, and for some of you who are kind of new to the discussions, one of the things that may not be obvious is that Portland has a unique form of city government. It's called a commission form of government. Commission forms of government at this point are essentially extinct. I believe Portland is the last city of its size in America to use the commission form of government. We've had it for about 100 years. We survived with it fairly well for maybe 50 to 75 of those years, but I would say that one of the reasons why Portland struggles right now is because how we've organized ourselves is irrational and antiquated and frankly untenable. I'll just unpack this a little bit more for you. Here's what the commission form of government is all about. Most of you probably think of Portland as having one mayor and 4 members of city council, but that is actually not the government we have in the real world. In practice, Portland has 5 mayors. Each is in charge of a little fiefdom within City Hall. And if those 5 different mayors don't work well together, the results that Portlanders see often are disappointing. To illustrate that, you heard I opened up by telling you I'm the commissioner in charge of the Water Bureau Environmental Services at 911. Commissioner Hardesty is the commissioner in charge of PBOT and the Office of Civic Life, which I'm sure you're familiar with. The mayor is in charge of the Police Bureau and a bunch of financial bureaus, so on and so forth. There are many virtues to this system, but here's one of the ways it fails. When the city is confronted with a complex problem that crosses bureau lines, we consistently struggle to deliver results. Houselessness is a great example. You might initially think that, well, houselessness is pretty straightforward. That's just a matter of housing or whatnot. But if you've ever had deep interactions with the houseless community, you know houselessness is complex. It's a matter of housing. Often it's a mental health issue. It can be a public safety issue. If you're sleeping in a park, it then becomes a parks issue. If you're camping on a sidewalk, that's in the right of way, which is controlled by PBOT. So that becomes a PBOT issue. So if you want to have a comprehensive houselessness strategy, one of the things you need to do is be able to get all of the bureaus of the city to work together. And frankly, our very form of government hinders us from doing that. But there is good news here. In November of 2022, so about 10 months from now, you should see a measure on your ballot, which will offer reforms to our commission form of government. We have a citizens committee that's been working for about a year to figure out what these reforms might be. Frankly, at this hour, they have not completely decided on what ideas they will send to the voters, but they have signaled clearly that they're going to put forward reforms that focus on two areas. One is the how we organize ourselves, actually frankly, just moving away from the commission form of government. Alternatives there often can either be a strong mayor, where we have the mayor who has a lot of power and is basically in charge of managing the day-to-day operations of the city. The other way most cities organize themselves is to have a city manager who's sort of like the head bureaucrat who is ultimately responsible for coordinating and overseeing the day-to-day services offered by city bureaus. I don't know where the Charter Review Commission is going to land on those issues, but I know they're thinking about that deeply and are likely to come up with some proposal on that topic. The other idea that the Charter Review Commission has said that they will send to the voters is to reform the way we go about electing members of city council. Now, right now, every member of city council runs citywide. So back when I was on the campaign trail, I was out talking to folks in outer East Portland and North Portland and the West Hills. And there's some virtues to that. On the other hand, I think there are many Portlanders who believe that we would have a more representative and more responsive city hall if we elected our members of city council through neighborhood-based electoral districts. So you might have a representative on council, for example, who represents outer East Portland or North Portland or the central industrial east side, something like that. The details matter there, but I think that is an important reform, which certainly deserves your consideration. And there's some other reforms on the electoral side, which I know that the commission is thinking about. I don't know where they're going to land. I think we've heard everything from multi-member districts to ranked choice voting. If you're interested in at least what some of those ideas look like, I can tell you what they look like. But what I can't tell you is where the Charter Review Commission is going to land. But I can tell you that the Charter Review Commission is still doing its work. I encourage you to Google Portland Charter Review Commission. They have a great website up. You can see all their documents. You can watch their previous meetings on video. If you have an idea about how you can make our form of government or how we elect members of council better, you can submit written testimony. You don't even have to go to a meeting. And if you do want to go to a meeting, the meetings are all online. So it's a relatively light lift. And I encourage you to do that. I'll tell you, I've been in this job for about a year, and I believe that changing our charter is one of the most important things that the city of Portland needs to do in order to serve the people of Portland better. Now I could go on like this for another 40 minutes, but I know you have questions. And so what I'd like to do now is to pause and hear what you're thinking about and engage in a dialogue.
Hi, Mingus. We'll start off with a question that was in the chat. And if you have a question for Mingus about what he was just talking about, go ahead and raise your e-hand or raise your physical hand, and we'll try and find you in the little photos. But we did have a question from Leah in the chat here. Let me find my notes, because of course it moved under the other screen. Two questions. The first says, can you tell us whether the Portland Street Response Program will be continued past February 2022?
Oh, yes. Literally everyone on city council is deeply committed to seeing Portland Street Response both work and expand citywide. Since I've been on council, we've taken that program from a pilot project out in the Lentz neighborhood and have essentially expanded it to all of the east side. Before this year is over, we'll start to see Portland Street Response also respond to some calls on the east or on the west side. There's never been any, there's literally zero opposition to Portland Street Response on city council. On the other hand, it has rolled out slowly. One of the reasons why it's rolled out slowly is that this is a big and heavy lift. This is literally a new first responder system, analogous to police or fire or ambulances. The details here really matter. I'm the commissioner in charge of 911, so I'm deeply sensitive to this. So my 911 operators are going to be the people who take your calls and then decide, do we send a cop to this? Do we send an ambulance to this? Do we send a first responder to this? Or do we send Portland Street Response to this? Lots of just logistical issues to think through, everything from, do you send Portland Street Response to a call involving a houseless person who may be armed, to how many trucks do we need and where do we position these trucks around the city. So no doubt in my mind, you're going to see continued expansion of Portland Street Response all throughout the city. And it's an exciting thing. Frankly, getting Portland Street Response right is one of the keys to both providing better service to our houseless community, our folks who are struggling with mental health issues, and I think to actually fundamentally fixing our public safety system. So that's one of the, I think, good news stories that is going to be unfolding over the course of this year and years to come.
I have a comment request here from Peggy and Sarah.
Sure.
And then we have this, the other question from Leah after.
Sure. Either way.
Peggy?
There you go. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. My comment is I feel very frustrated with living here in Woodstock lately. I feel like the people out on the street have more power than we do. I mean, it was just 2 years ago, my wife had a city employee come down and tell her that she had to shave her hedge or be fined thousands of dollars. Okay, that was less than 2 years ago. She did it. It cost her several $1,000s. It killed the hedge. And, so I feel like we're being bullied around by the city, but the people on the street aren't accountable for anything. And before people jump on me about, I don't know about homelessness, well, I do. I was hit by a drunk driver when I was 36 and my life went downhill from then, and I ended up on the street. So I know what that's like, but I didn't steal from anybody or anything like what's going on here. So my question is, and I don't understand why this isn't happening, especially along the streets where you see chop shops. I mean, we just had an F-150 on Woodstock not 4 days ago that they were chopping up in bright daylight.
Sure.
Okay, so why can't the police come by, or whoever committee you want to set up, check people for license, check people for registration, check people for insurance. If you don't have it, okay, you got a week to get it. You don't have it in a week, your car gets pulled. I'm sorry, it's just gotten to this point, and I think what should be addressed first is the people that are obviously engaged in criminal activity. The legitimately homeless, I don't have a problem with them unless they've been offered places to go and they refuse to go there. And I actually heard a council member say, and I don't know who it is, well, we have to work with these people and we have to gain their trust. Why do we have to do that? If it was us, any of us who were not in compliance, nobody be cutting us some slack. So
they didn't cut me slack when my hedge was 1 inch over the sidewalk.
Yeah, 100-year-old hedge and cost thousands of dollars to replant.
So let's go ahead and let Mingus respond to that.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sarah, I hear your frustration. I think several different forces have come together over the course of recent years to create the houseless situation that we see today. One is COVID. Frankly, during COVID, out of public health concerns, the city took essentially a hands-off approach to folks who were sleeping on the streets. The other factor, which is relevant here, has to deal with the courts. Because of recent court rulings, we are essentially barred by law from telling someone you have to move unless we can literally offer them a place to go, which essentially means the city has to have the same number of shelter beds as we do have people sleeping on the streets. And right now we have well, we're actually doing a homeless census literally tonight. But we probably have 5,000 to 6,000 people sleeping out on the streets tonight. Right now, we don't have 5,000 or 6,000 shelter beds, which means that it's very difficult legally to tell someone to move. The third factor here is that over the course of the past several years, the Portland Police Bureau has shrunk dramatically. You know, for a city our size, you'd expect Portland to have about 1,200 cops. As of today, we have fewer than 800 cops. I'm also the commissioner in charge of 911. I'll tell you, we get about 500,000 911 calls a year. Crime and other violence has expanded by 30% pretty easily during the COVID era. So the cops we have few cops, they're running around more than ever. They're working with more constraints than ever. And that has made a difference on the street in a negative way. On the other hand, I completely hear you. Every day I hear from Portland businesses and Portland residents who tell me, if things don't get better here, I'm not going to re-sign my lease. I'm going to sell my home and move to a different place. And frankly, I already see that happening. I find that to be an unacceptable outcome. One of the things that I am doing is working with my colleagues on council and other local governments to develop a strategy to make this better. I can tell you, I do believe that the houseless environment will look radically different and radically better a year from now than it does today. I will also completely concede that a year from now, we will still have houseless folks out there on the streets. But I do believe that we are beginning to turn the corner on this. The people of Portland have been generous enough to make enormous investments in houseless services. I think a thing that elected officials like me can no longer say is that people are on the streets because we don't have enough money to address the houselessness problem. I think at this point we do. On the other hand, there are other challenges that we need to address. You know, we need to build these shelter beds. We need to build more affordable housing. You know, we need to move beyond this COVID era where we are all in isolation. And all of that stuff is coming together. I told you I was shooting towards getting 1,000 people off the streets over the course of this next year, which should translate into roughly about a 20% reduction in houselessness. Plus, on top of that, you'll see us be much more aggressive about just cleaning up around houseless camps. You know, at the rate I think we'll do camp mitigation in terms, which is folks coming out and picking up garbage and litter around houseless camps. We'll increase that by a factor of 4-fold on this calendar year compared to last calendar year. So we're turning the corner here. On the other hand, it doesn't mean that the trauma that we've all experienced over the past several years isn't real. And it also doesn't mean that this moment isn't challenging, but I really encourage you to stick with the city. I'm here to make a difference. I believe we have the plans in place to actually make this better this year. And I think that we have the resources and plans in place to actually really fundamentally change the dynamics around homelessness in Portland within the course of 5 years.
Mm-hmm. I think there is an interesting comment here from Leah again, that, you know, that there is a problem and 911 are taking the calls, that there is still an issue with a non-emergency answer at East Portland. So I think there's a lot of frustration and just feeling like you don't get a, you know, response that you need.
Completely, and I'll tell you, I'm glad you asked this question because I am truly where the buck stops with 911 and the non-emergency. You know, here's my dilemma. We get a million calls over at the Bureau of Emergency Communications. About half of them are 911. About half of them are non-emergency. We're struggling to deal with that call volume. To put that in perspective, our call volume today is about 40% higher than it was 2 years ago. That's an awfully that's an awfully big surge to address on the fly, especially when it takes about 18 months to train a 911 call taker. But we have plans in place, and I can fix the 911 piece of this, I think, by the end of this calendar year. Here's what I'm doing. I'm hiring more 911 operators, and we're getting them trained up. That's going to make a big difference, and you should begin to see improvements. In fact, there are subtle improvements already in terms of how long you have to wait online. I'm also installing new software which helps us process these calls and dispatch first responders more efficiently. All of that stuff is in progress. And looks very promising. And the other piece has to deal with not those non-emergency calls. Again, we get about 500,000 of those. Ultimately, the answer there is both a fix. Ultimately, the answer for the non-emergency calls is to transfer them to a new service, and we're in the process of doing that. I hope by the end of this calendar year, instead of my 911 operators answering your non-emergency calls, our folks who currently work over at 311, which is sort of an information and referral service operated by the city, will take those calls. We're in the process of migrating those over. That will give you ultimately better service on non-emergency, and frankly, it'll free up my my BOIC operators to deal with your 911 calls. It's the right thing to do. There's a consensus on council that this is the right direction to move in. We're implementing it. This is a space that I expect to be dramatically improved by the end of this calendar year.
Right. So we have Damien. His hand is raised for a while.
And also Leah's other question that she had that in the comments was we were asked to come back to as well.
Sure.
So Damien, I know you're being patient there. I want to make sure and ask this since a neighbor asked us to come back to it as well. It's the question on interested in what you see as the issues preventing the contract for City of Portland staffers that is leading to the threatened strike.
I don't want to get too deep into this because we're literally in bargaining right now. The fundamental challenge here is that the city doesn't have enough money to offer the raises that the union wants. I'm a pro-union guy. Frankly, about a third of the folks over at the DCTU work for water or environmental services. This is my team. I could not do this work without them. These are my friends and partners and my team. I want them to have the tools and resources they need in order to do their work and be successful. The city is currently in this situation where we have actually a significant amount of one-time money, which basically comes from the federal government and is for COVID relief. And that's great. But it also needs to be spent on COVID relief, and it's one-time money. On the other hand, I think one of the things that the union is interested in is we've also wage gains. They want more wages, more raises, and I support raises for sure. But if you take a look at the ongoing dollars we have, we literally don't have the dollars, the ongoing dollars that the union would want in order to increase their salaries to the point that they where they want. You know, if I could wave a wand and do it, I would. But instead, you know, labor and management here are going to have to sit down, take a look at the books, and come up with a solution. And I'm confident that we'll get there.
Okay, let's go ahead and let our folks who've had their hands up patiently for a long time go. We have Damien Erland. Go ahead, you're first up.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Damien. I live in the Woodstock neighborhood, though the house I grew up in is in the Brentwood-Darlington neighborhood. So that's my corner of the woods. So Commissioner Mapps, I'm curious. So I totally agree with you on the reasons you mentioned for the charter reform and restructuring the city government. I'm wondering, as a hypothetical, you are going from 1 of 5 in a dual legislative and executive position. If you were to go to, say, let's say they do multi-member districts and they raise the number of folks to 12 for the Portland City Council.
Sure.
How is your day-to-day work going to look differently if you go from the 1 of 5 dual to 1 of 12 legislative And how would you imagine that translating into better outcomes as far as, let's take homelessness, for example, because it's a great example that crosses so many of our bureaus.
And this is one of the things I do think that Charter Review Commission is also thinking about changing the number of members of council. So the scenario you laid out would be exactly right. It would change the work of members of city council radically. It would be a fundamentally different job. You know, every member of council works very, very hard, 7 days a week. And frankly, probably 80% of my time is spent managing my bureaus. I think I have something like 1,200 direct reports between water, environmental services, and 911. After these reforms, members, I wouldn't have that responsibility anymore. I would be largely focused on setting policies and you know, coming up with budgets for this city. So you kind of take me out of the day-to-day management stuff. Frankly, it would be a much less fun and interesting job for me. I have a PhD in government. I've gone back and forth between being an academic who studies urban politics and a practitioner actually doing the people's work. One of the reasons why I'm here today is because I actually am interested in the mechanics of government and making that work right. And that piece of this job would disappear after charter reform gets implemented. Another question would be, this is a full-time job. This is more than a full-time job. This is like a 70-hour-a-week job. On the other hand, if you expanded the number of members on city council and took away their bureau assignments, you can imagine this being much more like a metro job, which is kind of a part-time job and, you know, is not sort of all-encompassing. So it would fundamentally and deeply change the nature of this work.
Michael, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks for having the opportunity. Really looking forward to this.
Me too.
I might have to step out really soon. We have a signing a refinance. We have a notary coming. But
good luck.
But I've been Woodstock, kind of near Autos.
Yeah.
We have a small 4.5-year-old, and many of my neighbors surrounding me have small kids, and that's really cool and awesome. And in the past 6 months or about, there's been like I would say a dramatic change in our vicinity. There's been a high degree of break-ins. A lot of my neighbors have describing it as almost like we're under attack in a way, like it just seems like a focused break-in. And so we're trying to figure out what to do about it. And there's small to, I would say, large scale stealing, like large things stolen, like RVs and trailers, and then home invasions, even calling 911 is, as you mentioned, taking a very long time, which is worrisome. And then late night street racing. I've witnessed on several occasions open IV drug use, many needles as litter. Open chop shops is kind of what mentioned before, and then slower police response time, especially for the active home invasion, up to 30 minutes. And we really love the neighborhood. We like it. We care a lot about it. And I think you could understand why we're frustrated. And a lot of my friends, as you mentioned, and neighbors are moving because of this. We don't want to, so we're trying to think of what to do, but we're just having trouble getting a hold of somebody even. We've been really trying. And so we have a sign that says neighborhood watch, and even that is like, there's really complicated to try and figure out how to do it. And I really believe in that, because I think that it needs to be training for us, because and how to partner, and so there's not like a vigilanteism type thing, which is not good. And but we can really like say like, hey, we want to do something about this. And I found it just difficult to even navigate how to do that. And so if you have any tips on that, or just, I think I'm just trying to say stuff that I've physically seen or my close friends have seen. And all of this is true.
I completely believe you. And I'll tell you, Michael, your story breaks my heart. I went to Reed College, so I've lived all over Woodstock. I can't count how many houses I've lived in that neighborhood over the years. And to see it change the way it has truly breaks my heart. And Woodstock obviously was not always this way. What is happening in your neighborhood is relatively new and acute, and I believe actually temporary. I'm glad we're talking to the neighborhood association folks, because I do think that you have some options. I've already mentioned how frankly, our public safety system is, or cops, let's just put it that way. Cops are overwhelmed. I'll tell you the truth, we're really struggling to respond appropriately to homicides. And probably if you're waiting for a long time for a cop, it's probably because they're dealing with a very violent crime, which has just gone down. Last year we had 90 homicides, as I'm sure a lot of you know. On the other hand, I do encourage folks, especially as we exit COVID, to re-engage with the community safety program over in the Office of Civic Life. It used to be the crime prevention program. Some of you might know me from my previous life where I was a supervisor over in the crime prevention program. Crime prevention is who 2 or 3 years ago would have been managing your neighborhood watch program. I know they did some rethinking about how that program works. On the other hand, I get the sense that there's been a revitalization of that program. So I really encourage you to reach out and work with your crime prevention coordinators. They can both tell you how to physically make your spaces safer. They can also provide advice on how to organize things like a neighborhood watch or whatever they want to call it these days. And the other reason I think it's really important for neighborhood associations to develop relationships with your community, I'm just going to call them crime prevention coordinators, with your crime prevention coordinators, is those folks also have relationships with police and investigators and the rest of the system. So they can offer you real world advice on what is actually going to work in the moment. So that's something which I would encourage every neighborhood association represented on this call to do.
Well, on that note, I actually, because we had this discussion before, a few months ago, actually, and I was pointed towards this program that's now called Neighbors Together, or it has kind of a wild new rephrasing, which I totally understand why. But quite honestly, aside from having 2 mailbox messages, nothing has been manifested. And, you know, I mean, we're all volunteers and it's really, really hard dragging along. And I think we need to figure out how to make that more fluid and accessible.
I would like to back Anna up on that before you comment. The city is putting an awful lot on an average of 5 to 10 volunteers per neighborhood, and we cannot get response. The programs that used to help us, the budgets that used to help us, they're all gone or they're all changed. And when you reach out to the new programs or the new offices, there is no response. It's the same crickets that neighbors are getting when they call the police, when they call non-emergency. It is just silence across the board, even for the neighborhood associations.
I hear you, and thank you for that feedback and reality check. I'm not surprised. You know, for those of you who know my story, you know, I love the Office of Civic Life and Neighborhood Associations, and frankly, the crime prevention program. They've undergone some leadership changes and some, I think, philosophical changes, and have struggled with COVID. As I check in with that group, I get the impression they've started to stabilize. So if you haven't engaged with them recently, I encourage you to give it another try. And also, I have nothing I can announce today, but I know that the city is thinking a lot about those crime prevention coordinators and how we can deploy them more effectively and frankly more aggressively. So over the course of this next year, I hope and frankly expect that we'll see some news and development and a different stance from them. So don't give up on the community safety program. And here's another reason not to give up on the community safety program. It's kind of what we got right now. So we really need it to work. I get why it's important. I'm doing everything I can from inside the building to change the dynamics there. I won't lie to you, it's a struggle. I think the whole Bureau is, well, the whole Bureau is in transition, right? They have a new commissioner in charge. They have a new director. They're working on Zoom, and crime has gone up 30–40% over the course of the past 2 years. So they are still trying to find their feet, at least on the public safety side. I know there's a lot of deep thinking about what we can do. And actually, you know, the community safety folks, AKA crime prevention coordinators, are frankly exactly what we need in this moment. So I really want to see them back out in the community. They know your neighborhoods, and they know the public safety system and what resources are available. So I hope we can turn this around.
Yeah, but it would also be good to have, you know, to have them actually engage the neighborhoods directly, so they actually know what the, you know, things at issue are and concerns are, so they can actually, you know, start the correct programs for it.
And listen, I will, although both Commissioner Hardesty's in charge of the Office of Civic Life, so obviously I'll raise these issues with Commissioner Hardesty, and I still talk to folks over in the crime prevention program, and I'll investigate where they're at and see if I can get them to reach out to Southeast Portland. I know they want to be there for you. I know that's true.
Yeah, no, I know that. So Daniel, you had your hand up for a while.
And then after Daniel, we'll cycle back to some of the comments here in the chat.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Mapps, for coming tonight.
Sure,
good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Daniel Newberry, although I do not live in the Woodstock neighborhood, I'm the director of a nonprofit business that's headquartered in the Woodstock neighborhood at Johnson Creek Watershed Council.
Of course.
First, I'd just like to say I'm in total agreement with what you said about the form of city government, charter government. Just, you know, when we elect people to lead us, we don't elect them for their administrative background. We elect them because of their ideas and where they're going to go legislatively. I mean, regardless of what we think about the federal government, we have in the Constitution, the legislative and the administrative branch is separated. And I think Portland should be that way too. So thank you. The issue I wanted to mention to you has to do with Portland's funds through the American Recovery Plan Act. That's the money that's come to states, municipalities. I'm just saying for the people who may not have heard of it, for COVID response and recovery in general. And I was involved in some of the meetings and saw how much money has been put into trash pickup for the city of Portland, several million. And I'm just really not seeing that money come out into the streets. And I recognize there are probably a lot of reasons for that. But one thing I wanted to mention, and this is something that affects my business and the work we're doing, and regardless of what folks think about, you know, houselessness and the impact, one thing that we're seeing in particular is that a lot of the natural areas, especially along Johnson Creek and some of the parks, are really getting hit hard with trash. And I would really like to see the city prioritize, you know, working on getting trash picked up in areas where there's also environmental damage happening, in addition to just general damage. I mean, I know nobody wants garbage around their houses, but you know, if we could get some more response in some of our natural areas, especially around the creek. I mean, we all saw recently there was a high water event, and you know that, you know, some of the garbage gets kind of lifted up and it goes downstream, and it definitely causes some damage. And so my message, I understand Dan Ryan is taking up, I think he is, or maybe it's Sam Adams, I guess, in the mayor's office. But I just, you know, want to get this on your radar, that it would be great if we could put some priority for trash pickup in our natural areas. So thank you.
Sure. Daniel, I completely agree with you. I'm the commissioner in charge of environmental services. So I got a lot of, in fact, I got a lot of wetlands, and you know, we have camping and trash. It's both a a threat to human life during the winter because of flooding, and frankly, camping there during the summer is dangerous because of fire hazards too. This is a top priority for me. You know, one of my dilemmas, day-to-day dilemmas as the commissioner in charge of a bunch of infrastructure bureaus that have land is, you know, there are plenty of times when my staff can't get out to maintain our infrastructure because we have chop shops and camps and other things going on there. Every time it rains hard, I'm kind of scared to death because we have people camping in floodplains who could easily get swept away. I do want you to know that at least with water and environmental services, I have some flexibility in terms of getting staff out to go out and pick things up. So if you see things, frankly, and you're Daniel, you probably know enough about who owns what piece of land. So if you see something on a water land, land owned by the Water Bureau, land owned by the Environmental Services, definitely give me a call or send me an email, and I have some mechanisms for addressing that. And I talk to my friends over in parks too, fairly often too. Increasingly, I think there's two tracks here to deal with sort of the residential houselessness and trash problem, and then dealing with the trash and open spaces. And it has received much less attention, but there's exciting stuff happening in terms of just maintaining our open spaces too. So if you have the bandwidth to send me an email, mingusmaps@portlandoregon.gov, let me know where the problems are, and we'll go out, take a look at it and see what we can do.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, anything that can happen in that respect. You know, in particular, BES properties, Brookside Wetland and Foster Floodplain are two of the big areas where we're having an increasing trash problem. And, you know, I'm not trying to put any blame anywhere. I'm just saying if there could be some priority in getting the garbage picked up there, that would be great. So thank you.
We can work on that. And I'll tell you, we've been working on both of those spaces since this summer, literally.
All right. Anna, are you okay if we wrap around back to the comments and then we'll have another voice comment from Steven? All right. And on that last note, Commissioner Maps, I would add that trash receptacles that trash could go into before it becomes a pickup need would be amazing. You know, lots and lots of those all over. So we've got a lot of comments that are asking you to wrap kind of back around to houseless issues. Especially around questions on safe parking for RVs and cars, as well as parking for those RVs and cars that are dealing in less than legal things. The other thing was a question on alternative housing, like why does it have to be a shelter bed? Why don't we have parking and things like that? And there was kind of grouped comments around regardless of a person's housing state, why are they being allowed to do illegal things? So I can give you more specific questions than that, but that kind of groups the various comments, and hopefully I didn't miss anybody in the scroll.
Sure, maybe I can break this into two sides, alternative shelters and then safe places to park. Both of these issues fall within the portfolio of Commissioner Dan Ryan, and I can tell you, Dan is both a friend of mine and he has been focused on this on a laser beam. I can also tell you this is one of the more challenging projects that you can possibly have as a member of City Council. So Commissioner Ryan is deeply dedicated to and working hard on setting up 6 safe rest villages. These would essentially be organized camps that would be staffed. You take folks who are currently living on the street and not ready to go inside. This would be a safe place for them to stay for a couple of months. We can connect them with services. And eventually transition them into shelters or affordable housing and supportive housing. That's exciting. The goal is to do 6 of those safe rest villages. I think at this point we've identified 3 of those sites. You might ask yourselves why. After a year of working on this project, are we still struggling to find sites? And that is because there is a lot of local resistance to setting up these sites. Every one of these sites has become controversial, and lawyers have become involved. Commissioner Ryan has been kind of grinding through the problem. He's been able to set up three organized camps, or at least identified the camps, and is in the process of building the infrastructure for it. Still working through the details on 3 more sites. And I also know that Commissioner Ryan has been doing the same thing to try to set up a safe place to park. And he's had the exact same problems, except frankly, probably less success. I know I can't remember what's made it into the papers and what's not made it into the papers on the safe places to park. I know Ryan has looked at and pitched several options. In each case, the owner of the properties have either said no, or the neighborhoods and lawyers representing neighbors have been able to squash that project. So that's where we are with the Safe Rest Villages, and both car-oriented and sort of tent-oriented. I believe we'll make progress there over the course of this next year, but it is also one of the toughest projects that you could possibly have. The politics there are very, very difficult.
Just on that note, a comment from Daniel that some of the Safe Rest Villages have been nixed because of zoning issues, or in the case of Brentwood-Darlington, it was in a floodplain, so therefore was not a safe rest at all. So, okay. And then
that was actually on BES land. If you broke it down, actually where they were proposing to put the camp up, there wasn't really a risk of flooding, but because of the larger zoning and overlay, it got nixed. But which tells you one of the challenges here. That was land that, I essentially control. I believe in Ryan's vision. I said, I will support you with this. I will do everything I can to make this work. And then even in the situation, because of the overlapping jurisdictions and whatnot, we couldn't pull it off.
That's you just illustrated why the bureaus need to work together more, and why folks might want to look at the charter review stuff.
It's absolutely true.
On that last note, before we let Stephen ask his question, the last one I missed in the comments was specifically if you could address chop shops.
Yes, an important problem. I live in inner southeast Buckman. Chop shops all over my neighborhood too. They are, frankly, we don't have the police staffing to address all of them, or frankly, even many of them. Cops are very focused on violent crime right now. It's a dysfunctional cycle. I think as you ignore chop shops, other problems arise, and then the problem becomes even worse. But that's one of the reasons why you find not a lot of police engagement with this. We're working on growing the police bureau. I think that'll make a difference. I am talking to the mayor and the police bureau and my colleagues on council to see if we can maybe have a different stance on this issue and change our priorities. But as of today, I don't have a plan that I can unveil. Although I hope within 2 months or so, I can unveil a plan that actually might address this, but we're not ready for prime time yet.
All right, looks like Stephen, you're up next with a question. And neighbors, just so you know, we'll make sure Commissioner Maps gets a copy of the chat log so he can actually see your questions written out.
Thank you. And I think I have, I'm pretty sure I have members of my staff hidden somewhere in here too. So Yvette's probably taken notes somewhere.
I saw at least one of them.
Okay, great. Hi, Stephen. You're not muted, but we can't hear you.
Stephen, we're not getting any audio from you. Okay, you're gonna go ahead and dial in. And so we'll give Stephen a minute. Well, Sorry about that. While we do that, I'll just add a few more comments.
Sure.
We're asking about places specifically needing cleanup. Many neighbors chimed in that Foster Road, past 92nd, especially along Johnson Creek, really needs that love in the environmental areas there.
Yes, I'm aware of this. We've actually been working on it. Again, this is an interesting dilemma. You know, I kind of control the floodplain, but if you're talking about stuff that's on the sidewalk or the streets, that's PBOT, and that's a different. And we work well with PBOT, but it illustrates the challenges that you face here.
Do we have another question while we wait for Stephen to dial in?
I'm actually dialed in. Can you hear me now?
There you are.
Yeah,
Yes,
there you go.
I can hear you now. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Technology at its finest, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
So, first of all, thank you for taking the time to answer the questions and setting up this forum. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a little frustrated like everybody else, on my side, and then there's a little frustration on y'all's end as well, because there's obviously a bunch of problems that we're all trying to solve.
Yeah.
And so, I guess that's the real preface to a set of questions. One of the things that I'm obviously seeing is that the police, for whatever reason, have not been empowered enough, and that we're starting to offload some of the policing functions that they're supposed to perform to our crime prevention or our neighborhood watch programs. And I'm just curious on what we're doing to empower our police and help us hold them accountable, and vice versa.
Great questions. And it's a multi-layered question. One is there's a police capacity situation. You could literally double the size of Portland's police department, and they would still have plenty of work to do. And I tell you that not because I'm a particular advocate of the police. I tell you that because I'm the guy in charge of dispatching police officers when someone is having a crisis. And it happens probably every hour of the day, basically. We get a call and you need a police in a situation, and we just literally don't have the squad cars. I've been in this role for about a year. I think over the course of the past year, I've had to call 911 probably about 4 different times for various situations, and even I don't get a response. So part of the answer is to grow the police bureau. We've had discussions about that. We have agreements to begin to grow the size of the bureau. That will take time. It takes about 18 months. Even if you hire a police officer, it takes about 18 months to train them up. But that process is in place. And I think as we get a year or two out, you're going to really see a difference on the staffing sides. It's also one of the reasons why Portland Street Response is so important. Number one, those folks are going to provide better services to the houseless community and folks having mental health issues. Also, if we don't have cops responding to those calls, it frees up cops to respond to more acute problems. So I think that's a really important issue. And then there's another layer to this. When you talk about empowering police, and this kind of echoes what I was talking about earlier, where the legal environment has really changed for police officers over the course of even the time I've been here. Just as we are constrained in terms of telling, just as city council can't tell a houseless person to move along unless we have a place for them to go, the courts have stepped in, and actually the state legislature has stepped in and really placed new limits on how you go about policing. And I think one of the things that's happening now is literally public safety officers, and it's true, the city of Portland too, are just figuring out, what are the sort of new norms around how you go about policing. And I think that, a lot of reforms are long overdue. We certainly have a history here in Portland of unfortunate interactions between the police bureau and folks who are undergoing mental health crises. So we needed to do something there, and we always want to focus on equity issues and fairness. So those are some of the dynamics. I think on the staffing side, things are going to get better. In fact, they already are better than they used to be, but we are also at the bottom in terms of the staffing side. It's going to help as we take some of these burdens off the police, especially the mental health and houselessness stuff, as Portland Street Response ramps up. And we are, we're doing a lot of new training and reforms around how police go about doing the work they do. It's a process we're all learning in terms of what policing in the 21st century will look like. I'm really confident that we're going to get this right. If there's any city that's going to do progressive policing correctly, it's gonna be Portland, Oregon. I think that we've done the work that we need to do to get there. I do also think that it's going to take some time, but by time, I don't mean 10 years. I don't mean 30 years. I expect us to make steady progress for about the next 5 years. And I think by the time we get to 5 years from now, we will have a fundamentally different public safety system here in Portland, really one ready for the 21st century, and one that you can also be proud of.
We have a few more questions about this, street parking, camper vans, the increase in trash, and expanding those encampments on the streets, which also introduce a lot more garbage, a lot more petty crime. And also what I heard over the last 1.5 years, a huge increase in drug dealing that also filters in and produces new kind of markets where to go. And the concern is really how can we, keep these kind of encampments or street parkings as small as possible, and also to say like, okay, there are, to distinguish between the homeless who are really in need of our help and the ones who are really committing crime and producing a lot of unsafe and unhealthy environments for us. And I think that's the biggest concern we have right now, because it looks like growing, especially in our shopping areas and around the shopping areas where we have a lot of people walking, we have a lot of children, older folks, and it just becomes a real hurdle. Let's put it this way.
I can't speak as deeply on this as I'm sure you'll want, partly because in our form of government, parking on the street is a Peabody issue, and that's Commissioner Hardesty's realm, but I can tell you what I'm doing about it. I'm also the commissioner in charge of environmental services. I'm your sewer guy. And one of the programs we started since I've been here is a mobile, I have trucks that go around and collect sewage from RVs parked around the city. It's actually been a huge success. It helps keep your streets clean. One of the things that we're going to be doing over the course of this next several months, in fact, I suspect we're already doing it, is we're adding a little bit of garbage service there too. So when we go out, we'll empty your toilet in your RV, and we'll take some of your garbage. So that's what I can do as your environmental services guy. We're engaged in conversations with Commissioner Ryan and Commissioner Hardesty about specifically serving folks who are living in their cars on the streets. I don't quite know what they have in the pipeline, but I can tell you I'm doing my best to keep poop off the streets and picking up garbage from the RVs.
Sorry, there was a follow-up on that.
Sorry. Hi.
Hey, Yvette.
My name's Yvette.
Go ahead.
I'm Commissioner Maps' Community Engagement Manager, and I just wanted to step in because the time we had allotted was 7 to 8 p.m. and it's 8, almost 10. So I just wanted to do a time check to let
thank
not
you,
go
Yvette.
over too long.
Thank you.
Yvette is my very capable staffer, and she looks out for me. I'm good. I don't got my kids tonight, so I can go on for a little bit.
And that's not the schedule I had from Anna. So sorry, we have different timelines going. Anna, what do you want to do there?
I can stay for as long as you want. I'm having fun.
Oh, thank you.
So to loop back around real fast on those environmental things, there is a question directly related to that about kind of looping back to that whole, there's chop shops and there's RVs not holding their chemicals.
Yeah.
So as an environmental concern comes from Brian, I believe, Brian Darby. Shops have to meet certain regulations. So why are cars on the street totally okay to be ripped apart and just left with the chemicals and all of that? And then related to that was why are RVs and cars with expired licenses and registrations able to be parked when most folks would get towed? And the third part to that was about parking in no parking, like no overnight parking zones. And we've actually had updated information in Brentwood-Darlington about those, what the city's doing on that. So if you don't, I'm happy to update neighbors on that.
I might, Chelsea, I might turn it over to you, especially if you have new information. Why don't we start with your information, because you have good information, and then I can share what I got.
I will just let you know that at a previous meeting, we were told that no overnight parking signs, like, you know, don't park between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. are not currently being enforced, and you will not be towed. Nobody you report will be towed. The only thing that will get a vehicle towed from a no parking area is if it is an environmental hazard or is a road hazard. So I saw lots of comments about adding more signs or getting them enforced. They're not currently enforcing them, so that's not a viable option for neighbors at this time.
That's consistent with my understanding too, and I'm glad Chelsea said it first. First, I should say one of the consequences of having a severely understaffed police bureau is that we have essentially shut down our traffic division. So you are not going to get pulled over because of tags or anything like that. And you are unlikely to get towed because of action by the city. These are important services that frankly the city is not doing at this point. I don't agree with those decisions, but that is how we are currently allocating the scarce resources we have.
Mm-hmm. Well, to honor the time here, I want to give Kim the possibility to speak, and then Stephanie.
Hi, Kim. You're muted.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
Thank
There
you
you
for
go.
being here. I'm having to sequester myself downstairs to the bathroom because my 7-year-old, I'm out there with him right now, and I don't want him to hear this conversation.
Yeah.
So I've been working with houselessness people for 20 years and have super conflicted feelings about what's going on. I'm in Woodstock, right behind Weimar.
Yep.
I hear that there are a lot of solutions kind of being worked on, and I feel hopeful about that. And I also know that a lot of issues that happen with houselessness people in your neighborhood are kind of nuisances, right? Like garbage and things that aren't good to look at, and home values and shit like that I don't. The bigger problem for me is that people don't have homes, and I think that's a basic human right. What I do want to be acknowledged is that my kids have been exposed to more violence in the last 6 months than it really breaks my heart. There's regular domestic violence right outside my kids' bedroom windows. We call the cops and nobody comes. Last week, somebody for my first grader at Woodstock Elementary came onto the recess and assaulted the principal and tried to get into the building. And I am regularly having conversations with my children about how to be compassionate for houseless people, right? And this is my work and this is my belief system. And I'm afraid for my safety. Like I walk my dog at 6 o'clock in the morning and there are 20 men outside my door. They're right there and there's nothing, and when they fight, I'm totally defenseless because the police do not come. And so I'm in the fight against homelessness, and this is unsafe. And I will look into these crime prevention coordinators, but it just seems like too little, too late. And already, what are what my kids have been exposed to as far as violence is just pretty astronomical. So again, I appreciate your time, and I know this isn't all your sphere of influence, but it's not all nonviolent. And I also work with a lot of gang involved youth and realize that that's a huge thing, right? But there's violence happening in these situations too, and that can't be ignored. So.
Kim, thanks for sharing that. And let me share this. You know, I'm a parent too, single parent. I got a 10-year-old boy and a 12-year-old boy. And my 11-year-old, or 11-year-old and 12-year-old, my 11-year-old asked for a phone for Christmas. And I was like, okay, why do you want a phone? And he told me he wants a phone because he actually has to ride his bike home from school at the end of the day, and his route takes him through Laurelhurst Park, which is famously problematic. And there's a guy in Laurelhurst Park who throws rocks at him as he rides his bike by. But you know, I'm a busy working parent. This is the only way to make it work. So I get the fear and frustration and the sadness that you feel for your kids. And I know what we're doing is untenable, or our current condition is untenable for ourselves and our kids, and frankly for our future. Every day I literally see and hear businesses leaving and people packing up and moving to different parts of Oregon and the country to escape what's going on. I do believe we can turn this around. I am trying to find a consensus package that will really directly address the chaos that's on the streets. I'm committed to bringing something forward, frankly, within the next 90 days, that I think will fundamentally change the dynamics that we have out there. I think the city needs to approach this differently. I think we need to approach it humanely, but this is also not safe for the people who are sleeping on their streets. You know, homicides are higher than they've ever been in Portland's history, but so are drug overdoses and deaths among houseless people. This is just the very definition of you know, I'm an infrastructure guy. We talk about triple wins, so economic wins, social wins, environmental wins. This is a triple loss. Just at every level, what we're doing now is terrible and unsustainable. I think that being houseless is not a crime. On the other hand, that if you are houseless, it doesn't make you immune from obeying the law or even the expectation that you would be a good neighbor. And those principles, I think, have largely gotten lost in recent years. I think we need to do a reset. Frankly, this is something I hear from both house people and from houseless people. You know, no one is victimized by houseless folks more than other houseless folks. People out there are scared, and they have reason to be. You know, I'm trying to come up with a new set of norms and services and practices that will make our streets safer. And I'm committed to rolling out a plan, frankly, about 90 days from now. I'm not quite sure what it'll look like, but I am sure that it will address some of your concerns, Kim.
Thank you.
Stephanie?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mapps, for being here tonight, or I guess I should say Commissioner Mapps.
I guess it's fine.
All right, fine. Okay. I am very interested in and committed to the neighborhood association system, and I want to see neighborhood associations play a strengthened role in city government. But specifically, my question is, what can we neighborhood associations do to support city efforts and our residents at the same time?
I think events like this are incredibly important. You know, frankly, at a time when your local government is overwhelmed, the work of neighborhood associations is more important than ever. You know, bring your community together, hear what your needs are, do your best to figure out how you can problem solve what's going on out in the streets. One of the ways I got there or got where I am today is I used to be very active in some neighborhood associations. And, we used to get together just as a practice. I would literally keep a list of the specific problems in the Park Rose neighborhood that were coming through the door. People knew to give them to me. And then we'd sit down with the school district, the business district, local faith groups, and we'd get a cop in the room and we'd say, what do we do about the drug house over there? What do we do about the fact that there is just no way to cross Sandy Boulevard without walking a half mile in either direction? And that proved to be incredibly powerful. You folks really are the catalyst for change. When I did this work out in Park Rose, I'll tell you, we would, we'd go to City Hall and ask for help, and they would kind of always throw it back on our shoulders, which is one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to be in this position, is to try to help empower neighborhood associations. And your particular institutions have gone through some complex history in recent years. I think it's getting better, or I hope it's gotten better in the last year or so. So, keep up the work. Try to problem solve. Pull together diverse groups of folks. So, if you are also talking to your local business association or faith groups, try to pull them in. Continue to talk to your commissioners. I'm always here as a resource for you. So if you have a problem, you can contact, it'll actually probably be Yvette if you email my office, especially on a community need. We won't always be able to solve the specific problem you have, but we can definitely offer you advice on where to go. I do think there is some light at the end of the tunnel, in that the Office of Civic Life is in a transitional moment. I think it was in a crisis moment a couple of years ago. I think it's stabilized as they figure out who the permanent leadership is going to be, and if it's going to continue to be configured in the way it's going to be configured. Those decisions, I think, will be sorted out by the end of this calendar year. And I think you're going to come out of this calendar year stronger than you have been in a long, long time. So it's really important. If all of you folks are involved, it's really important for you folks to stay healthy and vibrant and engaged in the next year, because I think a year from now, the city is going to be ready to support you again.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's a really great comment here from Brad saying information sharing is key. People need to hear how things are going. And I think that's really true. And I mean, you just pointed out, we have been through a crisis mode with the support. It was unfortunately when I started to live in Portland. I was just like flabbergasted at all this and thought, like, how on earth? Because I think it is a very important system that we have. And I'm speaking here partially from my own personal experience, because I'm an immigrant. I have no voting rights in this country. And these kind of systems are very important for participation for people like me. And, it's a really vulnerable position. And I think what you hear, from all people that are joining today is, we all want to be involved in this, and we feel like there are so many limitations that are getting to us in these ways where we establish a certain kind of frustration. And I think this information, this kind of how we communicate and how easy it is to get access to certain information and changes in programs is really key at this moment, because there is a certain kind of urgency right now that people feel. And I think we need to go there. And I want to give Sonia the chance to.
Yeah, let's have her be the last question. And then I want to have one comment directly for BES from the chat. And then remember, neighbors, will send all of these comments in the chat to Commissioner Mapp. So if you want him to respond directly, Yvette, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Send your contact information to Yvette by direct message. Don't put it in the group chat, and because that keeps everybody a little bit safer. Go ahead, Sonia.
I'll also say I'm not looking at the chat because I I can't multitask, but Yvette, if you could drop our contact information into the chat so folks know how to contact me, that would be appreciated. I'm sorry, Sonia. How are you?
Hi, I'm Sonia. And so I'm with the Woodstock Neighborhood Association, but also with All Saints Church. And we're sort of in between because we also do some services to folks that are houseless. But we also struggle with the campers along 41st. And I just kind of lost it not too long ago, though I've been trying to be pretty compassionate about all this, because we had a guy that was heating the inside of his van with a propane tank. And I called, we called the fire department at least a half a dozen times, and they would come and say, you have to turn it off. And as soon as he turned it off, they'd leave. And then he'd turn it back on after they left. And then they'd tell us or whoever I called, because there were a variety of people calling, that we needed to contact the police. Well, that didn't, anyway. So you've heard all this already. We sort of harassed him quite a bit in one way or another. I was in a polite conversation with him at one point, and we anyway, all he did was move to the other side of the street. But my train of thought here, I'm so sorry. We have had some success, and I was going to recommend this in with what Brett said. Some communication, come back, get junk, have used them several times. You can email them with a picture of junk that's abandoned. It has to be abandoned, and they will come pick it up. And I've actually had pretty fast response with them. So when the RVs moved out from the place over by US Bank, they left a huge pile. And I took a picture, I called, it was gone in 3 hours. So I just want to say there are a couple things that work. I called in, several of us kept tag teaming, calling in an abandoned car over on 41st. There were actually two. Somebody had a penchant for cobalts, I guess. But anyway, and finally they got removed, or the houseless people heard me, and then they communicated, and whoever had them removed them, but they got out of there. And then, so, part of it is there's a couple things we can use. I think we just have to stay on doing that. And I saw Central City had come by and was picking up some debris around the campers that are currently on 43rd right by Barmark. So I don't know what had triggered that, but they came by. I could hear there was a little fuss going on about it, but nonetheless, stuff was getting thrown in the back of the truck. So, I mean, I'm so over all of this, and, hoping that we can continue to move forward. And I wish as neighbors that we would support the development of these sites, because the alternative is we're living with it on our streets right next to us. So if we would kind of be activists to support the development of these safe rest sites, that would be really helpful to all of us, because then once they have a place to go, then more action can happen. So that's my plea to folks is, instead of doing a NIMBY, not in my backyard, how about let's say, yeah, that's a great site. Let's get them there because we're tired of living with them right next door to us. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Sonia. You broke up a little bit there, so I want to clarify something. Did you call RID to pick up who picked up your garbage? Was it the RID program with Metro?
It was the Portland, let me look at the email address. We'd been given this by neighborhood, the Neighborhood Ambassador Program. Portland Comeback at 1800.
Sonia, you're
junk.com.
Sonia, you are breaking up. Can you put it in the chat?
I put it in the chat once. I'll put it in again.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
okay,
much.
thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. And here's another thing, another program that actually works pretty well, and I'm not sure if it's connected or just rebranded, but Metro, one of our local governments, has a trash pickup service or an illegal dumping service, which has really stepped up and worked pretty well. If we can find someone who can Yvette, if you're still there, if you can drop RID's contact information into the chat, that would be helpful. So RID will come and pick up illegal dumping in your neighborhood. What they won't do if it's associated with a camp, so they won't come and clear out a camp, but if someone has just abandoned a camp or dumped a bunch of stuff illegally in your neighborhood, call RID. Free service. It used to take, frankly, it used to take them 2 months to get out to a site. At this point, the last time I checked their dashboard, they were actually responding to sites within 2 days. So that's a really good service. Take advantage of it. What they won't do is they won't deal with trash, which is associated with people who are right there. That really is a city function right now, or city/county function. To address problems like that, what you should do is go to onepointofcontact.com, or you can Google it. It's basically how you can report problematic camps to the city. We'll go out, evaluate the situation. Frankly, I was just looking at, we'll evaluate the situation. We measure sort of how problematic camps are on an objective scale. And we just grind through them every week. To put it in perspective, I think we got complaints about, last week we had complaints about 900 camps in the city. We took a look at about 300 of them. Last week we also, I think, picked up trash around 44 camps in the neighborhood, and we moved 9 camps. So it's not the impact reduction team is very much trying to empty an ocean with a spoon, but that's one good option. And you should report it anyway, just so people like me can know it and I can advocate for you as we go about developing budgets and programs. RID, on the other hand, I think is performing pretty effectively right now. So remember to take advantage of them.
Thank you.
So Anna, we've got one in the chat I'd like to address before we close questions, because this one's directly a question for environmental services. So SMJ says, I'm a low-income homeowner. I keep my utility usage low so I can afford it. Meanwhile, taxes keep going up and folks like me struggle sometimes to afford a minimum standard of living. While I appreciate the sewer and garbage services for those parking on the street, I find it extremely unfair that I struggle to pay for myself, and then my tax dollars go toward paying for others' utilities over which I have no control. So how do you help low-income homeowners who are also struggling with their sewer bills and things like that?
If you are struggling to pay for your water or sewer bills, one of the things I really encourage you to do, and this is, I hope even if you're not struggling, if you're a member of the neighborhood association, you take this information and share it. We do have programs over at Environmental Services and Water that will help you pay for your water bills. If you qualify, I can bring your water and sewer bill down by 2/3. If I encourage you, I don't have the number in front of me, maybe if Yvette can find it before we wrap up tonight. But if you go to the Water Bureau and look for our utility assistance program and give them a call. This is very important to me. It's my goal to get, I think we're trying to get 71% of folks who are eligible to participate in our low income utility assistance program signed up. We're miles away from that. One of the things you're going to hear me talk about a lot over the next year is, if that's a service that's meaningful to you, reach out and we'll try to help you out.
Thank you.
And Yvette did post a link to that in the chat. Yvette, you are a superhero this evening. Thank you so much.
I just want to say, I see someone praise Yvette in the chat, and Yvette has been amazing. I literally would not be here without it.
Yeah.
All right, Anna, do we want to go ahead and wrap up and be respectful of the commissioner's time and Yvette, who stayed later than she expected?
Yes, I think so. So with that being said, thank you so much, Commissioner Maps and Yvette, for staying on and preparing the meeting. It was really, really great to have you and to, get this kind of direct exchange. And it's,
I know you folks actually have real work that you need to do before your night's done. I want to thank you for taking time to chat with me about the state of the city. I also want you to know I hear your frustration and your pain. I hope you believe me that we actually are making progress here. I think 2022 is going to be a really pivotal year. If I could leave you with a couple of messages, it would be this. I do think that the most important thing that we could do to turn the city around at this point is charter reform. So I hope that you pay attention to this issue, maybe have a forum or two on it at your neighborhood association meetings over the course of the next 9 months. And I'd be glad to come to that too. And also, I hope you invite me back in a couple of months so we can do a check-in in the spring. I hope that both your gardens are thriving and we can get some of that trash and graffiti and litter and vulnerable people off the streets by then. And if not, that's a moment when you can hold me accountable.
well, we will certainly get back to you.
Great. Thank you, folks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all the neighbors who attended.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
And a
Happy New
reminder
Year.
for
We'll be
Woodstock
seeing you.
board members to stay on afterwards for the thing that Anna needs you for.
Yes.
And before everybody goes, Anna, when is Woodstock's next meeting?
Our next meeting is in March, I believe. That's our board meeting, and our next general meeting is the first Wednesday of April.
And Brentwood-Darlington invites you to our February 3rd meeting next week, especially if you want to hear about the new artwork going into the redesigned Arrow Heights Park. We'll have a special guest. So thanks for staying for our little plugs there. Thank you to Commissioner Maps. Big thanks to Anna at Woodstock for putting this together. And of course, kudos to Yvette for being amazing. Thank you all neighbors for coming. Woodstock board members stay. Everybody else have a great evening.
Yeah. Thank you, Chelsea, for helping and being so vigilant.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see.
All right, Anna, I'm going to go ahead and hop off the meeting unless
Yeah.
you want me to hang out and help you co-host till the end.
No, I think we deal with our Woodstock stuff.
All right,
But
I'll get out of your
you're
hair.
welcome to
Thanks for having
stay,
me.
but thank you.
All right, good night.
Good night. So, do we have Elisa? Yeah, there you are.
We want to stop the recording for the people who might want to see the commissioner.
Oh,
in
yeah.
entirety.
That's a good point. I